friends. I have missed you so much. I look around this room and I see places where our beloveds used to sit, now empty. And I see new friends to fall in love with. And since we've been friends for almost 7 years, I feel like I need to come into this pulpit just as I am and tell you the whole truth today. The truth is, my heart is broken. I am afraid. I am disgusted. I feel betrayed, but I'm not surprised. I am angry, and my feelings are bigger than my body. I want to rage, but I'm exhausted, and I don't know if it'll do any good. But here's something I can do. I can tell the truth. So today, as we look at Psalm 139, which I picked a month ago, not knowing we would be discussing it this day, a text so often used to suppress choice, a text so often used to induce guilt and heap shame and blame it on God, I seek a fresh word. I seek a revelation from God who we believe is active among us, who we believe is working toward liberation and justice even still. I suspect I'm not the only preacher preaching this text today, but I guarantee you I'm the only preacher who's going to preach it like this. So let us turn to the Word of God in Psalm chapter 139, beginning in verse 1. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from far away. You search out my path and my lying down and are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, O Lord, you know it completely. You hem me in behind and before and lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is so high that I cannot attain it. Moving to verse 13, for it was you who formed my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works that I know very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes beheld my unformed substance. In your book were written all the days that were formed for me when none of them as yet existed. How weighty to me are your thoughts, O God. How vast is the sum of them. I try to count them. They are more than the sand. I come to the end. I am still with you. Pray with me. God, as we read your word this day, we pray that you would be here with us. Help us to hear what you are saying. May we sense your Spirit's leadership for us this day and every day. Amen. The psalmist here is reflecting both on God as powerful and on God as a nurturer. God is celebrated here as all-knowing, as proactively seeking relationship with us. God who authentically and fully knows us and who keeps us safe. God who hems us in behind and before and lays their hand on us. That sounds like me trying to walk with my daughter, behind and before and laying my hand on her. God who transcends time and space, and God is celebrated here as intimate nurturer. God who creates through imagination. God the tender mother. I see a God of love, a God who cherishes their relationship with humanity. I see a God who respects humanity. And given this moment, I feel that same God calling me to proclaim candidly and just say some stuff. So here we go. Reproductive health care is as old as human history. As long as humans have lived, they have loved and they have reproduced, and they have terminated pregnancies. You may recall reading about the bitter herbs in the Old Testament. You can look it up in Numbers 5, 21 through 28 if you're unsure. You may recall rumors of special teas you could drink. They're one and the same, and they are aborticants as old as time. Right there in our biblical text, administered by priests. As medicine has advanced, so has our understanding of what can prevent or terminate pregnancy. When first invented, contraception was illegal, and after much suffering, then was legal only for married women. Do you see the connection? Contraception was invented for all who needed it, but only available to married women. Those who prescribed it or took it could be jailed. But even then, there was no way to legally end a pregnancy. So women did what women have always done. They made their own way out. Thousands of women were seriously injured or died because of dangerous attempts to terminate pregnancies on their own. Some tried to kill themselves, and some succeeded. Many of you remember life before Roe. You remember girls who would disappear for a year or so and then come back like nothing had happened. You remember the homes for girls who got in trouble and the wire hangers and the home kits and how much bleeding there would be. Roe versus Wade gave women a future. It decreased the number of women dying by suicide. It increased the number of women finishing school. And it established opportunity for women to advance professionally and financially. Roe versus Wade gave women a future. I also understand that for some of you, the thought of an abortion is unconscionable. You could not imagine voluntarily terminating a pregnancy. Perhaps you struggled with infertility and wanted more than anything to have children, and you do not understand why someone who could conceive would not want to carry that child or let someone adopt that child. Or perhaps you believe theologically that abortion is immoral. Maybe you believe that life begins at conception or heartbeat, and that pregnancy is a covenant relationship for which we are chosen. This is a sensitive topic, and I want to show care for all of the delicate and legitimate feelings that we have. Let's hold on to our feelings, but let's bring information to the table in search of greater understanding for what's going on in this moment. An abortion is an elective termination of pregnancy. Most women in America receiving abortions already have children and recognize they cannot responsibly parent additional children. But some women terminate pregnancies because they're not at a place in life where they can be the kind of mother that they want to be. Because they're still in school, or they're building their career, or they're in an abusive relationship, or they're not in good health. Some women learn that their children will have severe disabilities that they are not equipped to handle. And some pregnancies are a threat to the mother's health. Some are not viable even if carried to full term. And because of the way we count menstrual cycles, by the earliest possible time a woman could know she is pregnant, she is already considered 4 weeks pregnant. And I say that because in a state with a 6-week ban, it's really a 2-week ban. Have you ever been able to get off work and get 2 appointments with a specialist in high demand within 2 weeks? 6 weeks is a near total ban, and we need to name that. Abortions do typically happen in the earliest stages of pregnancy. Most states that allow it through the first trimester or 12 weeks. A few states allow it through 20 weeks. And I'm not asking you to suddenly be comfortable with abortion if you're not. I'm not asking you to suddenly be okay with it if you're not. But I am asking you to think beyond your perspective to why other people might choose it for themselves. And I must put my Baptist hat on and remind us all of the separation of church and state. America does not have an official religion. It is built into the First Amendment of the Bill of Rights that our country does not endorse any particular religion, nor can any religion seek to use the government for itself. This means we all have freedom to believe what we believe. And the government will protect our right to believe that. But the government will protect everybody else's right to believe what they believe too. So let's think about that with some less emotionally expensive ideas first. Some of you curse like sailors. Can we just name that? And some of you would never speak such words. Cursing is legal. Though there are laws about what we can say in public and around children, you can choose to curse or not. And as long as you follow the law, you are protected in your choice. Some of us are open to more artistic adult content in movies and on the internet. And some of us believe this is exploitative and vile. There are laws to protect how these kinds of content are made and who can access them and how. And we can all choose what media we consume or don't. The law regulates for safety, and we have freedom to choose based on our convictions. There are a lot of things I do not like that are legal. And I can choose not to do them. I can choose not to financially support them. But I cannot interfere with other people's rights to make their own choices within the law. Similarly, abortion is regulated by the government to ensure that it is safe, because when it is legal, it saves lives. If you think it's wrong, you have a right to think that it's wrong. And you don't ever have to have one, and rest assured your tax dollars will never support one. But you cannot prevent other people from accessing abortion care because you think it's wrong. Different faiths view the start of life differently. Did you know that in Judaism and Islam, life begins at birth and not during pregnancy at all? Christianity has a spectrum of beliefs ranging from conception to heartbeat to viability to birth, not to mention Buddhism or Hinduism or others. And there are people who don't practice religion at all, who have various beliefs about abortion, and all of those beliefs are protected by the First Amendment, which separates church and state. And so you can believe what you believe. And nobody is going to try to argue with you that you have to change your mind. But the government is going to protect everybody's right to believe what they believe too. And what the government should be doing is making sure things are legal and safe. Think about when someone you love has a serious illness for which there is a treatment, and they elect palliative care. Sometimes we understand why someone does not want to go through surgery or chemo or radiation because we know how treacherous that road would be. But sometimes this is devastating to families because we want our loved ones to fight for their lives so they can be with us longer. Ultimately, we let the patient decide their care because it's their decision. It is not up to us whether we agree with their decision or not. Oh, that we could think of reproductive care the same way. Whether you can understand why someone would elect an abortion or whether you could never understand, oh, that we could step back and realize it's just not up to us what someone else decides for their medical care. We have a right to feel how we feel, but they have the exclusive right to make the decision. And let me unpack farther why this SCOTUS decision is so devastating. Thousands of women will die. Thousands of LGBTQ people will not have access to health care. And thousands of LGBTQ teenagers will die by suicide. This will guarantee a permanent underclass of Black and brown women and will codify white supremacy for generations. That is what will happen. This was a death sentence. No matter what that headline says, this is not about life. If it were about life, we would be talking about wide open doors at clinics and hospitals, and increasing access to birth control, and not forewarning that it will be next on the chopping block. We would be celebrating love and marriage and not threatening to delegitimize the ones we find objectionable. We would be talking about affordable child care and well-resourced public education that actually prepares people for jobs that earn a living wage. We would be talking about safe communities for housing, about representative government, about healing racially motivated policing and incarceration. If this were about life, the anti-abortion protesters would set down their picket signs and line up to adopt the babies they insist must be born and give generously to support their flourishing into adulthood. This ruling was not about life. It was about criminalizing women who don't want to be pregnant. It was about criminalizing women's sexuality. It was about criminalizing women's independence. There's nothing in this ruling about holding men involved accountable for their part. I've been pregnant twice, and both times I didn't achieve it alone. I hope it's okay to say that. This ruling doesn't hold men responsible for supporting the pregnancy or the mother financially during the pregnancy. Both sides of this argument care about life, and both sides of this argument care about choice. Make no mistake, all this language is gaslighting. What's true is I have less rights than my mother did when she was my age. And now I am a mother to a daughter, and I'm terrified. Yes, I will teach my daughter how to not get pregnant, but I will also teach my son how to not cause a pregnancy, and I will teach them both that I will be a reliable source of information to them and an ever-present help in times of need, and my husband and I will model the partnership of responsibility for parenthood. But 25 to 30% of American women have had an abortion. That means everyone in this room knows and loves someone who has had an abortion, whether you're aware of that or not. That means everyone in this room is related to someone who has had an abortion, whether you're aware of that or not. And around 10% of the adult population is LGBTQ, and that means everyone in this room knows and loves someone who is LGBTQ, whether you're aware or not. And that means everyone in this room is related to somebody who is LGBTQ, whether you are aware or not. This decision is devastating for someone you love. This decision is devastating for the people of God. We're called to be the hands and feet of Christ in the world, to proclaim release for the captives and recovery from sickness and jubilee. It's in there twice, Isaiah and Luke. And yet folks out here are proclaiming captivity and sickness and lifelong poverty, as if the most important facet of the gospel were chastity instead of charity. And they're blaming it on God. In this moment, I rely on my upbringing and I turn to the text. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from far away. You search out my path and my lying down and are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, O Lord, you know it completely. You hem me in behind and before and lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is so high that I cannot attain it, for it was you who formed my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works that I know very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes beheld my unformed substance. In your book were written all the days that were formed for me, when none of them as yet existed. How weighty to me are your thoughts, O God. How vast is the sum of them. I tried to count them. They are more than the sand. I come to the end. I am still with you. As I read that text again, I see some things newly. If I read this through the lens of patriarchal domination, I fear for my safety immediately, because God and the church become like deputized stalkers from which there's no escape. And if I step out of line, perhaps it'll be my last step. But if I read the text for what it actually says, and in general I think that's a good practice, I see the psalmist with freedom to think and decide. And I see a God who provides room for this kind of relationship. I see a psalmist who perhaps feels understood only by God, but is reassured that God is with her and knows her and loves her. Have you ever let someone really know you? I mean, there's like the little bit that we let out in public, and then there's the little bit more that we let out at home for the kitchen people, and then there's like a little bit more we let out for the people that get to the bedroom, but there's still that little bit left that is just for you in the bathroom. I am not the only person with those tears. Why are y'all laughing at me? Have you ever let anyone all the way to the bathroom level of you? It's scary to open up yourself to another person in that way, because if they know you, what if they don't like you anymore and they leave? But this psalmist feels so safe in her relationship with God that it's a tender companionship where she can show her whole self. She can tell her whole truth and be met with love and care and a sense of security. And as I read this text, I just don't see God as a judge. I don't see a God of guilt or shame or exploitation or fear. I don't see her holding back. I just see God with her, and it's good. She knows she's made in the image of God. She knows that her relationship with God will empower her to live according to God's will. This psalm is not an apology for life beginning at conception. That is a gross misreading of this text. This psalm is about relationship with God. How God has made us in God's image, how we share in God's work in the world because God has equipped us with understanding. We have a kind of a knowing, don't we? That voice inside that guides us. Our knowing helps us to discern and decide. It alerts us to danger. It confirms when we're safe. I see this psalmist celebrating her knowing. She trusts herself because she knows that she's made in the image of God. I have felt this knowing in my life. I have never faced an unexpected pregnancy. But I have known when I needed to leave an abusive relationship. I have known when I fell in love. I have known when I was called to ministry. This is the same knowing we can trust when someone comes out to us, when someone trusts us with their story, when someone chooses to terminate a pregnancy, or any time we see injustice or oppression. This knowing is the image of God active in us. This knowing is the image of God active in others. And this knowing is not anything we can regulate. So what do we do? If you are still weeping and gnashing on the floor, you take the time you need. It's okay. Don't let anyone rush you from prayer if you are still casting your cares at the feet of God. But if you are up and ready to go, I want to start with one proposition. If we are all made in the image of God, trust the knowing in each person to lead them. If we are all made in the image of God, trust the knowing in each person to lead them. That means if someone is making a decision you think is right, trust the knowing to lead them. That means if someone is making a decision you think is dead wrong, trust the knowing to lead them. That means if someone is not making a decision and you think they should, trust the knowing to lead them. God has not asked us to make decisions for each other. God has not asked us to regulate one another into submission. God has not asked us to interfere with each other's medical care. God has not asked us to lobby one another into oblivion or harass one another on social media. God has asked us two things. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, and your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. That's it. God has asked us to love. Can you imagine how difficult it must be to find yourself unexpectedly pregnant, or to acknowledge that you are not straight or not cisgender and afraid that those you love will decide they don't love you anymore? Can you imagine? Statistically, some of you don't have to. Can you imagine how scary it must be to need medical care you cannot get legally unless you have the right connections or bank account balance? Can you imagine how lonely it must be to carry this kind of secret because you don't know who you can trust with all of who you are? Remember our psalmist? So comfortable with God, so free to share herself with them, so at ease in her vulnerability, confident in God's love for her. So if we are to love others as God has loved us, Psalm 139 shows the depth of God's love for us. God loves us by receiving our whole truth, by harboring us in our vulnerability, by respecting our knowing and being with us through all of it. So if you come to me and you tell me you're going to do something and I think it's a great idea, I'm going to love you through it because your knowing will lead you. And if you come to me and you tell me you're going to do something and I think it's a terrible idea, I'm going to love you through it because your knowing will lead you. Because either way, my call is to love you, to see you and honor your knowing and be with you. I trust women. I trust women. I trust queer people. I trust people of color. And I name those particular groups because they are who will suffer the most from this ruling. I hear their self-proclamation and honor their knowing, and I will respond with love. This love isn't just on the individual level either. It can't be. This love will also look like dismantling the patriarchy. Some of you still have all your tools. Hang on to those. If you have extras, share with the people until all have enough. Read Acts 2 to learn how. This love will also look like dismantling white supremacy. It's incompatible with the gospel, and it's got to go. This love will also look like protecting the rights of LGBTQ persons. This love will also look like protecting reproductive justice. It has to be collective, because no one is free until we're all free. And we are most certainly not free. If our children cannot safely come out to us, then they are not free. If we are afraid our daughters might be raped, but we are not afraid that our sons might be rapists, then we are not free. If our women risk their own lives to end pregnancies because they are afraid to ask doctors for help, then we are not free. So what now? Breathe and push. Do you remember that? Breathe and push. Breathe. If the wind is still knocked out of you, breathe deeply until you're ready to get up. And then push. Let us push by loving each other. Let us push by loving without judgment, without filter, without censor, without partisan agenda. Separation of church and state does not mean that church people do nothing. And let me make myself clear, when I said when people do things you think are a bad idea, just love them anyway, it was not me saying just do nothing. Because I think if we do nothing, we're kind of morally bankrupt in this moment. I think we have to do something. And I think that something is love. And I think your little heart is going pitter-patter, pitter-patter, because you have a pretty specific idea of what that's going to look like for you. And I think that's your knowing. We show our love when we vote. We show our love when we march. We show our love when we donate. We show our love when we volunteer. We show our love any way we work so that everyone can be free. We show our love when we serve our communities. We show our love when we show up, especially when we show up for other people. Because then we recognize all of our freedom is connected. We show our love by listening to others' whole truth, even and especially when it makes us uncomfortable. We show our love by trusting the knowing. I walked through fire, I came out the other side. I chased desire, I made sure I got what's mine. And I continued to believe that I'm the one for me. And because I'm mine, I walk the line. 'Cause we're adventurers and heartbreak is our map, a final destination we lack. We stopped asking directions to places they have never been. And to be loved, we need to be known. We'll finally find our way back home. And through the joy and pain that our lives bring, we can do hard things. I hit rock bottom, it felt like a brand new start. I'm not the problem, sometimes things fall apart. And I continued to believe the best people are free. And it took some time, but I'm finally fine. 'Cause we're adventurers and heartbreak is our map, a final destination we lack. We stopped asking directions to places they have never been. And to be loved, we need to be known. We'll finally find our way back home. And through the joy and pain that our lives bring, we can do hard things.